I'm Kathy Lang. This is November 15th, 2002. We're in Harrison, Ohio at the library, and we're interviewing Russ Steele.
Okay. My name is Russ Steele, and I was born in Dearborn County, Indiana, Logan Township. I was drafted in March of 41 off of my father's farm, and I went in for $21 a month as a draftee. I was drafted at Fort Knox, where I went to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, and from there they took several aptitude tests and they sent me to communication school in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I attended the radio operator school, graduated, and they sent me from there to the 760th Tank Battalion in Camp Bowie, Texas. It's near Brownville. I was down there for a little while, and they sent me back up to Fort Knox for radio electrician school. So, so I was then communication officer for the 760th Tank Battalion. Now, the communication officer is a well, I'm getting ahead of myself. From there, I was at radio electrician school when Pearl Harbor hit, when they hit Pearl Harbor. And I went back and I said, look, I'm going to be in this place for a while, so I might as well try to go see how far I can go. So I came back up to Fort Knox as Officer Candidate School. And I graduated there as one of these shaved tails. I was in the 9th class at OCS at Fort Knox. And from there, they sent us to the 3rd Armored Division, 3rd Battalion in the Mojave Desert in Rice, California. We went through maneuvers there, and I was assigned as a battalion communication officer in the 3rd Battalion. From there, there was a Captain Talley, the communication officer, so I worked with him. From there, we went through certain maneuvers and training there in the Mojave Desert, and it was hot. You could fry eggs on a tank in the daytime. It got that hot, and you just stayed in. From there, we went by train to Camp Pickett, Virginia. We were headed for North Africa. I was Captain Talley was transferred to regimental headquarters as their S3, and I was transferred to regimental headquarters as a communication officer. The weather was such in North Africa that we didn't go over there. They sent us back. They sent a lighter motorized division, and they sent us up to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. We were up there for quite a while, and from there we went from there to Boston, the port, and went overseas. Let's see, when we did. Well, let's see. I joined the Officers Candidate School. From there, it must have been about October or August of 42. That's when you got out of Officers Candidate School. So then we went over to England. We landed at Bath, and we went down to Warminster. That was near Stonehenge. units were placed in different villages around the place, but we all trained there in England on the Salisbury Plains. We enjoyed our stay there, and we saw the B-17s go out and come back. Some of them didn't come back, but they sent me to as a communication officer. They sent me to the British Communication Center, where I was to learn what how to operate British equipment and be communicating with the British on communications. We were all ready to cross the channel. Waterproofed. Our vehicles went across on the LST. That these gentlemen was in a different theater, but it was the LSTs, and we were all waterproofed, and we didn't go in on D-Day. They broke through. The D-Day had passed, and we went into Omaha Beach on it's about D plus 14, so that would make it about later in June that we landed in France. We went through the build-up on the beachhead. We went through the fighting and the hedgerows. We witnessed the battle, and we were in the battle for St. Lo. We saw the planes come over, and it was in that raid that in that air bombing that General McNair was killed. We went from there wasn't anything left of St. Lo. We went on east from there, and we closed. There's several places. We were in the 1st Army under General Bradley. General Hodges was the Army commander, and Collins was our Corps commander. And we were on the north as we went across France. We had several skirmishes through there, and they were rough. We went on into Paris. We left Paris for the French to take. De Gaulle was then a prominent name, and so we bypassed Paris. We circled around Paris and on the south, and we headed north to Mons, Belgium, and there we cut off the people that were defending, the Germans who were defending the beaches, and they were trying to get back to fight again back through Belgium. We took prisoners after prisoners. I don't know how many we took there. We went on through. To tell you, the Germans had a lot of horse-drawn kitchens and horse-drawn artillery pieces, and the Belgians came out and sliced off the meat off of the horses that were killed that time. And then we went on through to east through Namur, Liège, and on into Stolberg. We got into Stolberg. We went in through a little town of Eupen, and it was there that we really knew we were in on enemy ground. Going through Belgium, they're just all over you. The Belgians were so happy to see us, and you got into Eupen, and all you see was there wasn't anybody. White sheets were draped out the windows, and it was just a scary, eerie feeling. So we went on through Eupen. We had some tough skirmishes there. We did some firing. We were right there, and I remember we had a German personnel carrier at our front about 1,000 yards, and it was funny to see those Germans scrambling out of it. When the first shot hit 200 yards short, I gave the order to up 100 yards and fire with an HE shell, and boy, they really took out. And then we got on in through Eupen, as I say, some heavy fighting. There wasn't anything left of Aachen. We were back there in '89, and it was all rebuilt again, but it was just a bunch of rubble. And all the cathedrals were pretty well damaged as we went through. We went on from Eupen to Röttgen and the Dragon's Teeth. That was their defense against the tanks, and it didn't stop us. We were the first to enter Germany, and the Dragon's Teeth, they were these concrete things that you've seen pictures of, and they were just running clear up the hill. What we did with those, we didn't try to dig them out. We just pushed dirt up and made ramps up over them. They were about 4 foot high, and we just pushed dirt up over them, and the tanks went on over the top. Thank you. So they were defended by small arms fire and pillboxes, and of course you had to get the pillboxes and the small arms fire before you could do this, and we did this. We went on east, and to make a longer story short, we went on to Cologne, and I was in Cologne. We were held up there. All the bridges on the Rhine River were blown, except the Remagen Bridge, and it was ready to go. And it was captured, I think it was the 29th Infantry Division, captured that and put a bridgehead on the other side. They were able to put a pontoon bridge just upstream from the Remagen Bridge, and that's how we crossed the Rhine. There was heavy fighting around the cathedral and Cologne, and I have some good pictures of the Cologne Cathedral. Others went on tours through the cathedral, but not I wasn't. I was the person that didn't take any more chances than I had to. I was lucky. Anyway, we got across the Remagen Bridge, and we got built up over there. We got the division across, And the division was something like 15,000 men. It was a complete fighting unit. It had two tank regiments, an infantry regiment. It had a signal company. It had engineers. It had supply trains, and then it had division headquarters. After we got the division across the Rhine River, we headed north to the Ruhr Valley. This was the industrial part of Germany, and we did a historic march that day. We traveled some 100 miles with tanks and division that day. We got up to the north far enough, and we run into live trains coming out of going east, and several of these trains were hit and knocked out, and the prisoners taken. They were loaded with not only soldiers, but they had a lot of civilians there. These people were well-dressed people, and they thought we didn't know we were there. So we went on up towards Paderborn, and that's where General Rose was killed, our division commander. I was with him the day he was killed. I was in Task Force Wilburn, and we had coiled our column behind us into a field, and General Rose came up with us, and he says, he identified myself. I had a Jeep at that time. I was traveling I could go in several different ways. I could go in a Jeep, or I could go in a Sherman tank, or I could go in a light tank. I was in a Jeep with a radio, and so he asked me if I had radio contact with Colonel Wilburn, and I tried. I couldn't get him. He had run into tanks ahead of us, and found out there were tanks behind us. They had cut into our column. They were M5s, and General Rose was dressed in his pink riding boots, or pink trousers and riding boots, and an Eisenhower jacket, and but he was in the ditch just like the rest of us when we were talking to him. He had a half a dozen vehicles in his troop, or in his with his headquarters, and he got in an armored car and was going on down north. He just went right on down, and he was going to find Colonel Wilburn. Well, Wilburn had turned off to the right, and he didn't know that. We didn't know that, and one of the German tanks wedged his vehicle against a tree, and he didn't speak English, and the general was given an order that I think was to drop his guns, and that's what he was doing, supposedly, drop his pistols, and the German gunner just ripped right up the middle. They went back the next day, and they found him. We had cleared out everything, and found him the next day. So we went on up to Paderborn. Paderborn was like the Armored Force School. It's like Fort Knox, where they trained. and they were prepared there to throw everything they had at us to stop our column. And we ran into some M5s, and people were just scared to death. We came into we pulled us up on a plateau overlooking the road, and it was what they called a baby factory. And had a lot of, you never saw so many pregnant women that were there in this facility. And when these tigers came down, they just opened up with everything we had on them. We didn't have much to shoot. I was in a Jeep, and we had some light tanks, and when you shoot at the tanks, you shoot at the tracks or the underside, and you can knock a track off. And the Germans, I found this out too, that the Germans, they call the Sherman tank the death trap. It just didn't have enough armor on them to take the shot even from an M4, German M4. But an M5, and that had a bigger gun, and then the M6 was a Tiger tanks. Well, the Tigers are coming, you know. So we knocked the two M5s out, and finally we pulled up a tank destroyer, and we got another one or two, and we opened up the road to Paderborn. Well, it was in Paderborn that I got scratched a little bit, and my driver was hit. We didn't stop to clear out everything. We just went right on through, you know, just keep going. And so I got hit in the arm, and my driver was was creased, just like he lay a lead pencil along his ear. And he went out, and I grabbed the steering wheel and pulled the Jeep up on the top of a levee-like thing was there. And finally a half track came along, and they pulled us both into the half track, and we went right on. When they did get back to the medics, what made me, I was really upset. I had a new combat jacket, and that medic took the scissors and went right up my sleeve with it. And it ruined my jacket, so my new jacket, so I got another one. So anyway, we went on into Paderborn, and we had some tough fighting there. And from Paderborn, we went on east, and we went by some of these concentration camps. We went by Nordhausen, and this was a town, or a camp, a concentration camp, where they had Polish people. It was full of people, and they built these buzz bombs. These they call them buzz bombs. We hadn't seen too many of those before, but they make an awful racket. And then when they boast, they throw shells or throw scraps of metal and everything all over. And this is where they made those bombs. We went on east to Dessau, and that was another camp. And then we went on through the. I didn't get in the camp. We didn't stop long enough. We just kept going. Some of the rear elements of our division went in and observed some of the things and the conditions in which these people lived, and they had just other others that were just skeletons. And in one place they had the men all stacked up in like cords of wood, you know. They were just starved to death. And the same way at the Dessau, that was another camp. So we went, our trains had, our supply trains had trouble keeping up with us. And some of those got in some pretty rough scrimmages. We went on to the Elbe River, and that's where they stopped us, and we had to wait. We were straddled the Autobahn, and the sign said 50 kilometers to Berlin. We stopped us there, and they waited for the Russians, and they came on back. Now, what I've missed here was the Battle of the Bulge. I was in that one too. We were in a cellar Christmas Day up near Eupen, and as I have said before, Eupen was enemy soil. You knew that, and so they pulled us back. I was in Task Force Lovelady, and they pulled us back, clear back to Spa, Belgium. That's where General Eisenhower had his headquarters set up at that time. He kept moving forward as the troops, as the line moved forward too. And this was the Battle of the Bulge. That was rougher than a cob. The Germans, the objective was to capture gasoline. They were going to capture gasoline, our dumps, and they were going on to Antwerp, which would have split our troops, would have split our complete troops. They came up there one time during that fight they were in this little town. We knew they were in the town. The town had been bombed and been shelled, and we pulled 155 millimeter rifles up there and fired right directly into the tank. You never saw such a sorry-looking bunch of Germans that came out of that town. They were one helping each other. They didn't make the dumps, but these dumps were they were 50 feet long, and these were 5-gallon cans. George said something about it. He's read where they had 50-gallon drums, or somebody, maybe John had 50-gallon drums with fuel, and all they needed was fuel, was just how close that thing came to succeeding. After the Bulge fight, we went on. I think that's when we went on to Cologne. That was before we went to Cologne. I will, as rough as it was, I personally, I'll take my feet on the ground rather than the water, as George and this friend over here had. We were in civilized people, at least we thought we were. They could speak our language, they could hear us, and it was different than fighting in the Pacific. We came after the Russians met up. They pulled us back, and we went back into the camp area for for several weeks, and finally we had enough points, and they were getting us ready to go to the Pacific Theater. And boy, some of us had enough points. I don't think we would have had to go anyway, but we came back in October. The World Series was on. We came back with the 7th Armored Division, and we came into Boston, and we transferred to, they transferred us there from, well, the harbor was full of these water ships, you know, the different colored, shooting water and that sort of thing, and the celebration. And they sent us to Atterbury, and they discharged us me back to Indiana. So I came back, and then I went to school for the GI Bill, and also in electrical engineering. And my highest rank, after we was a captain, I was a captain and the colonel promoted me in Cologne. He called me in one day, chewed me out, just gave me one heck of a thrashing. And then he pulled out a big set of bars he put on his shoulder. So we went back in '89, and Omaha Beach was Omaha Beach was on the east, or on the middle. Omaha Beach was. Utah Beach was out at Cherbourg, and the Cons area, and that's where the museum is today. The museum area was the British and the Canadians, and we had a lot of respect for the Canadians. We were we were the only unit in the service that didn't serve under George Patton. So Patton is a dirty word as far as the 3rd Armored Division is concerned. Patton was he was a lot of guff and that sort of thing, but he did deliver in some cases. He criticized a lot. He criticized Montgomery. He got credit for pulling or saving Bastogne. But other than that, why the museum at Fort Knox is named after the Patton Museum, and we have memorials there too. Well, there's a lot more.
Can you explain, Russ, how the point system worked for a person to get out of combat and go home? How did you get points?
Length of service. Your length of service.
Length of service, I think that's what.
And your dependency.
Yeah.
If you had any dependents.
Yeah.
Did it matter if you'd been in big battles or not? Did you get extra points for that? For seeing combat?
No.
No.
What about for winning a medal? Did you get points for that?
For the medals? No, the medals were distributed. I'm sure there were a lot of places or a lot of men that deserved medals that didn't get them. I happen to be that I got a Purple Heart, I got the Silver Star, I got the 5 campaign medals for Europe, and I got a medal or a thing from the French government. I think this was at Mortain, where we had pulled in for the night, we thought, and we were on this forward slope here, with this, I was in a Jeep at that time, and we had no more and gotten in there and coiled up all on this facing the hill, and the Germans were just waiting for us. Well, they fired on this unit of ours, and you never saw the whole hillside lit up. Everything was set afire. And one hit the colonel's half track, and he was back at Corps headquarters, and he wasn't there, but his S3 was killed, and several others, some liaison officers, and I don't know just where I was at the time, but I got this half track was exploding all around us for this hillside. So Doc Roberts and I we were crawling along on our bellies back this fence road, and pretty soon Doc Roberts says, "I'm hit, I'm hit." Well, about that time I felt a sting in my rear end, and but we crawled on back, and we laughed about it afterwards. And Doc Roberts says to me, he says, "Russ," he says, "how in the world did they hit me with your big butt sticking up in the air?" So that was and the Silver Star came about the next morning. The colonel sent me back to his tank wasn't hit. He had a half track and a tank, where the half track had all these radio equipment in it, and so he sent me with a tank driver back to this area where all these tanks were the whole hillside was full of charge, and I didn't think too much about it at the time. But the Germans were still there. But we got in that tank, and we got it turned around and drove it back, and we saved his tank. And at that time, I had the opportunity to look at some of the corpses on the ground there. I looked, and there was Colonel Gilkey. I don't know who all they were, but that was something, and that's how the medals got distributed, and then the colonel had to recommend it someplace, up the line some way. I don't know.
When you were moving so fast through Germany, was that because they were racing to get to Berlin? You hear that the different armies wanted to be the first to Berlin, and then you got right outside and they made you stop and they let the Russians go in.
Well, the thing that we had to destroy the troops. We had to show our superiority and communications and mobility and firepower and so forth. That's why we moved so fast. We went there for days. I don't know, as we were going past Nordhausen and into the Ruhr Valley. We went there for days. We didn't have a bath. We didn't change our clothes. We just lived like, not like men anymore. But we kept going. That was our orders, and that was General Rose's philosophy. Beat him to the punch.
So once you made it to outside of Berlin, that's where you stopped?
Yeah.
And then you got to go home from there. Was that 1945?
Yes.
So that was the end of the war.
At the end of the war there. Yeah.
Did you ever wonder, Russ, during all this really difficult time. Did you ever wonder if we might not win?
Well, you never know. You never thought about those things. Even when in the Battle of the Bulge, you know, a lot of Germans dressed as Americans and so forth. You just had to be careful. No, we had a purpose. We had a purpose to be there, and so we get the job done. We get home. That was the philosophy, pretty much.
When you went through those towns and liberated those people, the Belgians and the people that had been under the Nazis' heel for years, and they were just so glad to see you, did that make you feel like it was worthwhile?
Well, yes, it did. They were just all over the tanks with loaves of bread, these long loaves of bread and bakery goods and cognac. You could have thrown out some ammunition at some of the liquors that they tried to give you and make you, feel good about it. But, no, we had a purpose. We knew why we were there. At least I did. So I never had that feeling. No.
You were under Omar Bradley.
Bradley was he was directly one of the, Hodges was the First Army commander. Bradley had the whole, he was on Eisenhower's staff. And I read Bradley's book. There was a lot of maneuvering there for, for rank and so forth. And Bradley and I admired those people. Eisenhower came up a few times, and he had to be a jewel to keep the thing coordinated between, and the friction between the British and Americans, the American generals and so forth. And there's a lot of criticism of the British general. He was a British general.
Montgomery? Montgomery?
No. Yeah, Montgomery. Yes, Montgomery.
How did you feel about the British?
Well, we always stopped for tea. It didn't make any difference what they were doing, but the only time I had contact, I had more contact in England than I did after the war started. I thought they had to be, the time that they were cut off at Dunkirk and had to be evacuated back, and how they kept fighting, and it just, the home front, there's the and war minister, they would send out these 2.5-ton trucks with seats in them, and they would bring loads of girls down for a dance at the clubs. I was in the MOQ, that's the Married Officers' Quarters, and so I didn't raise a lot of hell over there. I wanted to get home.
You spoke of the cathedral in Cologne. Was it damaged a great amount?
Not a whole lot, no. Some of the cathedrals were spared. Some of them were spared. And most of them that were hit hard have been restored now. But the cathedral, we had we walked around the apron around the cathedral. No, it wasn't.
When you went back in '89, did you go back to Aachen after in '89?
Yes, we did.
And it was rebuilt?
Yes,
Had been
it was
rebuilt?
Rebuilt, yeah.
Totally rebuilt, obviously, it was
Oh, yeah,
flattened.
yeah. Yeah, we even ate at McDonald's.
Oh.
It's amazing to see those cities rebuilt so quickly and
Yes.
so well there. After you saw them when they were just nothing but a pile of rocks.
That's right.
How did the people receive you in 1989 when you came back?
You know, they apparently they had. Well, we went through museums on Omaha Beach. We went through the cemeteries too. In '89, we went through the cemetery where in Normandy and McGrath, and another one where General Rose was buried. We got into Rodga, and we knew that, well, where's the dragon's teeth? And finally, no one knew in town where they were. At least they didn't tell us, or they weren't going to tell us, or didn't know, maybe. You know, that had been, what, 40 years ago,
Sure.
30, 45 years ago. And so finally, we just took off on our own. We rented a car in '89. We rented a car in Frankfurt, Germany, and drove all the way through Clearbrown, through Belgium, and up to through back to Normandy, or to the Omaha Beach, and then back to Frankfurt again. But the dragon's teeth, my wife spotted the dragon teeth, and here they were going right up over the hill there. They had big trees growing in them that big around. They were all grown up, grown. The pillboxes were still there, but they had been blown up, and so they didn't let on like they knew we had been there. A lot of times, they.
You say dragon's teeth.
Huh?
You say dragon's teeth. Exactly what is dragon's teeth?
Oh, let's see if I don't have a picture here somewhere. They're a series of about 4 foot square teeth that are built like a pyramid.
Okay.
And
What were they used for? Stop tanks. Oh, to stop tanks.
They were built to stop tanks, right, Russ?
yes, they were stopped tanks.
Tanker.
But it didn't work. He said they got over them anyway. But you had heard about these dragon's teeth?
Oh yeah, we knew they were there.
Everybody was looking for those dragon's teeth.
That's Normandy.
That's okay. I just wondered what they were.
They were concrete, and they would be quite formidable. Formidable. You either had to dig them out, and it was easier to go over the top of them.
Now, when you went, you didn't go into any of the concentration camps. You just went by them.
Yeah, I went by them, and the one at Nordhausen, no, we didn't go in. I'd say the troops that followed us went in. The task force commander went in. They were out on, those are walking, some of them were out on the road, walking along the road, and one of them had a German guard in front of him, and he was giving him his foot every he didn't move fast enough.
Were you aware of those concentration camps
Yes,
before you
yes,
before you got there?
yeah, yeah. There were others that, you know, to the north are where they killed a lot of the Jews and so forth. That's gas chambers and so forth. But they never told these people where they were going for sure. And, I say, I'm not sure what they built at Dessau. Nordhausen was the buzz bombs, and this was all underground. All the factories were built underground, big tunnels.
Well, Russ, I guess that's it. Do you have anything else you would like to say?
I guess I was one of the lucky ones. I went all the way through. Had a couple of number of close calls. But I was just glad to be back. Well, I can't seem to find breaching the Siegfried line. Show some pictures of that.
We're glad you made it back too, and we're grateful for your service to our country.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of more that just I don't have as good a recall as some people.
You
I
did
think you
very
had
well.
excellent recall.
You did very well.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.